If VR in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 feels blurry, unstable, or maybe slightly uncomfortable, well, it's not your headset. It's how you're approaching it. And today I'll show you the 5 beginner mistakes that quietly destroy immersion and how to fix them properly. So what makes VR so different? Now, well, VR is not just a monitor on your face. No, in VR, your brain is processing depth, tracking motion, adjusting to scale, and your brain is handling performance changes in real time. And in a heavy sim like Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, that really matters. Because when performance drops on a monitor, well, that's annoying. But if performance drops in VR, VR becomes uncomfortable. So let's fix that, so you won't make these mistakes. Smooth frame rate versus ultra settings. Well, this is the golden rule of VR. In something as heavy as Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, chasing ultra settings will kill your FPS and your smoothness. And in VR, a low FPS means discomfort. Inconsistent frame times, stutters, and your brain no longer believes that you are in a beautiful sim and in a beautiful VR environment. Now, when your brain disconnects, you're gonna take the headset off. And that's not what we want. We want to aim for a stable performance, even if that means medium settings or low. You can use motion reprojection or ASW if you have a Quest 3 and cap your FPS instead of trying to get the max FPS out of it. No, just cap it. If you have a 90 Hz headset, cap your FPS at 45. If 45 is not achievable, cap it at 30 or about 33. And if you're running at 72 Hz, you can cap it at 36, that's half the refresh rate. If you do that, you get a very much more stable frame rate and everything will look a lot smoother. Start with a slow aircraft. Your brain needs adaptation time. So start with a Cessna 172 Piper Arrow or a very slow helicopter. Or an old bird like this one. In the beginning, avoid these fighter jets, the big airliners. Avoid low-level aerobatics or aggressive turbulence. No, just nice, calm weather, good visibility, a slow aircraft, and just fly the damn plane. That's it. Just very slow and relax. Enjoy the scenery as we fly here over Monaco and try to enjoy VR. You don't need to do all that. And I know you want this jet. I know you want the airliner, but give yourself the time to adapt to VR. All right, and you need that time. And in the next video, I will give you my 5-hour adaptation plan for VR. So stand by for that one, and that video come out after this one. So let's continue to tip number 3. Alright, so tip number 3, and that's not the hardest one. Choose the right place to fly. And well, really this is critical, because not all scenery is equal in VR. What you want is depth, landmarks, elevation changes, and visual references. For example, here, the Grand Canyon, which Microsoft Flight Simulator has really beautiful, amazingly rendered here in the sim. It's absolutely breathtaking. You get extreme depth perception. Look at this. Wow. And you can't see this on a flat screen, on a monitor. The video doesn't show it. But once you're in VR and you're in the Grand Canyon, you'll see the scale of it. And this is perfect for low and slow general aviation aircraft. Because you get to enjoy the scenery. And once you get adapted to VR, you can take that fighter jet and really go Mach 3 through the canyon. Yeah, you just have to try it one time, okay? So, let me show you 4 other places which are stunning for VR. Let's go to place number 2. This was the Grand Canyon, and now we're going all the way across the globe to an amazing airport in an amazing scenery. Let's go. Try a challenging approach into Innsbruck. Mountainous terrain, amazing in VR, especially around dusk or early in the morning. It's beautiful and really you're gonna enjoy it. You just have to try it. Right, we're not gonna land, but we're gonna go close to the runway. And then we go to back to the other side of the world. We're going to South America.
500.
Or you can just take a helicopter and fly over Rio de Janeiro. Look at that. You get the depth. You're flying in a helicopter. You can look down. And okay, helicopter flying is not that easy, but it is so much fun to do. Now when you're up here, try to do a 360 around Christ the Redeemer. Here we go. Look at this. The height, the depth. Wow. Of course, you can take the Scenic tour over Queenstown, New Zealand, and see the sun come up over the mountains and the waters here. And that is cinematic VFR flying here in New Zealand. It is absolutely beautiful. And now this is a complete different scenery to fly in. We are in the Nordic. This is Svalbard with Longyear Airport. And the scale of all these mountains here, and everything is white, and a beautiful Nordic Arctic light. It is really beautiful, and really flying here FPS wise is amazing. You can get so much performance here and really enjoy this scenery. Before we move on, I want to briefly touch on hardware, because in VR hardware does shape the experience, and this video is supported by Pimax. Now, here's why that actually matters in context. Because one of the biggest immersion killers in VR isn't just performance, but it's clarity. So when you lean toward an instrument panel, or when you scan the terrain, when you're judging your depth and height on final approach, resolution and edge-to-edge clarity directly affect how beautiful it feels and how natural it is. So headsets like the Pimax Crystal Lite or the Pimax Crystal Super, they are designed specifically around visual sharpness and field of view. And that becomes especially noticeable in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. Now, here's what's important. No headset replaces good settings for VR. And no headset will fix unstable frame time. But once your system is tuned correctly, higher optical clarity does enhance the realism, especially for cockpit heavy flying like general aviation or helicopters. So if you're serious about long-term VR immersion, I leave all the info below the video in the description. And you can even have a 3% discount when you purchase a Crystal Lite or a Crystal Super with my promo code VIRTUSIM, VIRTUSIM, VIRTUSIM. Alright, let's continue. Right, tip number 4. Try to build a cockpit workflow as early as possible. Because VR becomes frustrating when your interaction with the cockpit feels chaotic. So you can decide very early on if you want to use a mouse or VR controllers, and if you want to fly with a yoke, throttle quadrant, rudder pedals, and then map all the essential controls like your flaps, trim, your gear, autopilot disconnect, your COM switches. So then in that way you can reduce dependency on the virtual cockpit and click everywhere in the cockpit during mid-flight. So you have all these switches right under your fingertips. Because if you have to click all these switches in the cockpit, then that may become an overload. Because you are in VR, you're trying to fly the aircraft. It's a 3D environment, and still you have to adapt to it. So if you map all these essential key bindings, it makes things a lot easier. Also, make sure that you're always in the same position for the sim. So in that case, you can find your yoke and your throttles just by muscle memory, and that makes it a lot easier. So if you're always sitting in the same position, keep your controls at the same position, you don't have to look for it, and you find it, well, just blindly. It's like driving a car and, well, there are lots of turbulence here. It's like driving a car and you want to shift gears. You can find that poke blindly. That's the way it should be. So you have to simplify everything, make it easier. Now, for example, take a breath here. Notice how stable the cockpit feels, and when all the movement is controlled, I don't have to do anything here. I've got my mouse, so I can change a few things like frequencies and maybe select some other things that I have to turn on a knob. Easy to do without getting overloaded with everything. I can easily find my mouse, I can find my throttles, I can change it, and I've got my yoke. And that's the goal, right? No chaos, but full control of the cockpit. And now for tip number 5. You want to manage the adaptation to VR and VR fatigue. Because when you start flying in VR, your brain is learning new spatial rules. And the early symptoms can be eye fatigue. If your headset is not adjusted properly in front of your eyes or on your head, you can get eye fatigue. You can get mild dizziness because of being in VR. And your brain really has to adapt to that new 3D world. And after a flight, you can have that VR hangover feeling. Like, whoa, man. And then you take off the headset and you're like, wow, I'm a little bit dizzy. Got this little bit of a hangover. But this is completely normal. So, how do you manage it? Well, you limit all your early sessions to about 20 to 30 minutes. And then increase the time in VR gradually. Stay hydrated and do not force it. Don't go flying for 2 hours, 3 hours in the beginning. No, start slowly. Take a little break and then go back in again. And the tolerance of being in VR, that builds up with consistency. Remember, if your first session feels a little bit of overwhelming, that's good. That's perfectly normal. That means your brain is adjusting to the VR world. And after a few flights, it's only getting better. And that, my friends, brings us to the end of this video. So you might have noticed that VR in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 is not all about graphical fidelity. It's all about spatial realism. So when performance is stable, when speed is controlled, and your scenery supports depth and height, VR stops feeling like a feature, but it starts feeling like real flight. Now you can also add some more realism features like a motion rig, a haptic seat, force feedback yoke, you name it. But start with the basics first. Alright guys, that was it. The next video is my 5-hour roadmap into VR. So stay tuned for that one. I hope you enjoyed this video and see you all in the next one. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. This was Mike, 30sim. Happy flying!
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.